Okay, we're going to be talking about the Cambodian genocide today in our genocides unit. Cambodia, we have a map here. One second. Cambodia is over here. It is in East Asia. We have maybe some countries that we would recognize. We have Australia over here. We have Japan up here. China's here. India's here. We've talked. Oh, we have talked about the Suez Canal. Here's Europe, obviously, America. You can go over the Pacific, go over to here. But Cambodia is this country here in what we would call the Southeast Pacific, and basically kind of right to the south of China, south of Japan. So during the 1970s, Cambodia was run by the Communist Party, and the Communist Party, the rulers were called, I might be pronouncing this wrong, the Khmer Rouge. Let me check that pronunciation.
Pot's genocidal Khmer Rouge regime
Khmer
to commit
Rouge.
mass atrocities.
Khmer
More
Rouge.
recently, documents were discovered.
All right. Khmer Rouge. The Khmer Rouge regime was a brutal regime that ruled Cambodia from 1975 to 1979. 1979. The dictator in charge was a man, and this is him right here, named Pol Pot. He was attempting to create a Cambodian master race, where we heard this before. We heard this with the Nazis and the Holocaust. A Cambodian master race through social engineering. When we see here social engineering, what we're saying is we want to make certain groups larger with respect to our society. A lot of times that involves killing the people that we don't like. Yes, so about 2 million died in Cambodia. Many of those were killed. Many of those killed were executed as enemies of the state, enemies of the regime, or they died from starvation, disease, or overwork. And we're going to talk about why that happened here as we kind of go through Pol Pot's plan. So, Pol Pot's plan, Pol Pot and his forces, the plan was to make a, what do we call it here? A communist style agricultural, all right, utopia. In other words, he wanted to create a perfect world where everyone's equal. That's communism. Everyone puts in the same amount of, puts in their work, and everyone gets the same, which sounds great, right? We don't have the rich and the poor, and everyone kind of has the same, gets the same things. It's all based on farming. The goal is to be self-sufficient and live off the goods that they produced. And so the idea is that we're going to create this communist society where everyone gets the same as everyone else, and that what we end up having is we have a situation where we farm the land and we are able to eat off of what we make. And so it sounds great. We call this like an agrarian society, an agricultural society. The idea was that it was going to get rid of the ideas of capitalism and the big cities and the intellectuals, and it's just going to make life much more simple. It's just people and farms, and everyone is equal. So Pol Pot declared 1975 year zero, meaning that we're starting from scratch, all right, and isolated Cambodia, meaning kept them aside from the global community. He moved people from the cities to rural areas. All right, so he's saying get out of the cities. We're not having cities. That's not what we're doing here. To rural areas. All right, he outlawed the ownership of private property. So you're not allowed to have your own car. You're not, like, everything belongs to the state. You're not allowed to have your own desk or your own, cell phone. There weren't cell phones back then, but whatever, your own car, your own close. Everything belongs to the state. Nobody owns anything. All right, as well as the practice of religion. The idea is that nothing is higher than the state, and so they don't want religious affiliations kind of getting in the way of their power structure. So what ends up happening, so that's the plan. You could imagine how it could sound good. It's going to be this utopia. It's going to be great, but it doesn't quite go to plan. So we had extreme mismanagement of the country's economy. It led to shortages in food and medicine. And so many of the people, as part of this Holocaust, as part of the Holocaust, part of this genocide, died, all right, not just from being executed, but from disease and starvation. Because again, this sounds great, but you get rid of all the cities, you get rid of private property, everyone's going to live off of a farm. I mean, again, it sounds okay, but in practice, what ends up happening is you don't have the same you don't have the same economic output, and so some of these things that make it possible to feed everybody just aren't there, and the infrastructure that is necessary to do that just is not there. In addition to this, groups were targeted based on their religion. In particular, 500,000, which is about 70% of this group of the Sham Muslim population, were killed. So Pol Pot would take religious groups, he would isolate them, and he would execute them. He killed 70% of this group of people. Let's see. But not only that, because there was an emphasis on farming. Anyone who was considered an intellectual, like smart, was targeted for special treatment, including teachers, lawyers, and doctors. The idea is that anybody that is intelligent is going to potentially be a problem for the regime, because they're going to say, they're going to maybe be literate, they're going to be more educated, they're going to potentially be a threat to this. Whereas if you're not educated, then you're much less of a threat. Estimates of people killed are estimate from 1.5 to 3 million people. It's very difficult to tell, but the consensus is around 2.2 million. This represents in total, about 25% of the population. Okay, so since that time, Cambodia has transitioned to a functioning, it says that as functionary democracy. I think it means functioning democracy. Functioning democracy today. But the country has had difficulty addressing its past. In 1997, about 5 people, obviously there were a lot more than 5 people responsible for this, of those responsible were put on trial for their actions, but only 3 were convicted and are serving life sentences. Many, and it's very interesting about how complex that this is, many of the Cambodian genocide sites are actually tourist attractions today. All right, meaning that you can pay money and you can go and see these sites. I would think it's somewhat similar to like today, slave holding, and so like places where enslaved people worked in farms in the South, like plantations, are sometimes tourist attractions where you can go and you can have a wedding, or you can go and rent the place out or go and see it. It's a tourist attraction to go and kind of see. This creates a conflict because the country is making money from places that are connected with death, and suffering. And so the country has difficulty grappling with this past even to this day. But this is our 9-minute rundown of the Cambodian genocide. Pol Pot comes to power. He believes that communism and having like this utopian communist agricultural society is the answer. It ends up not going quite the way not going very well, and he is targeting people because they're intellectual or because they are part of certain religious groups. A ton of people were killed in Cambodia between 1975 and 1979.